everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato here in studio in DraftKings, where I am too. We're both holding it down here at the DraftKings studio in Boston for the week. And we got a great show for you guys. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKings Network, our YouTube. You can catch the best of noon to 1 p.m. Eastern wherever you hear VSiN. And we got a fun one today. Matt Miller, ESPN draft analyst, going to stop by because, buddy, we had a time at the Combine this weekend, Dad. The Underwear Olympics that you have sat here and belittled for so long provided an incredible entertainment prospect, so I'm hoping you're ready to eat your words.
Oh, it's not, again, I like watching the athletes perform. Quit putting the words in my mouth this is from the football side of it, not the player side of it. They're doing what they're supposed to do if they choose to do the workouts, which seems to have become quite the headline as well, as far as what you do when you actually come to the Combine. But as usual, Mike, there are some unbelievable athletes out there who do unbelievable things. So that, to me, is the fun part, the eye-popping kind of performances out there. And we certainly had a few.
We saw some Combine freaks this week we will get to. We've got winners and losers because it's Monday after the Combine, so you best believe we are going to deliver. We have got record-setting performances in women's college basketball, in the NBA, but we have to get to the most important measurements that you will see this entire weekend as well. It happened. We have been sitting around waiting. GoJo and Golic day ones. Obviously, you know, Claudia is hanging out with us here, in part because our friend Jessie Cofield is out maternity leave right now, and she finally Baja blasted that baby out. Please welcome Henry William Noack into the world. 9 pounds, 6 ounce baby Jesus, 20 and a half inches. The kid is an absolute hoss, but mom and baby both doing great. So Jessie finally got to Baja blast this baby out at 7:54 p.m. on Sunday night. So we've got height, weight, and a text card for this baby before it's even won, Claudia. It's incredible.
An absolute unit, I think, is probably the best way to ever describe a child that you just gave birth to. So, Jessie, there's no better way to put it. I am so pumped for her.
We almost got her. Dad, we almost got her to zoom in on the show. That's how deeply unhinged Jessie is she was actually ready to zoom in with us this morning from the hospital instead of taking the time to recover like the champ that she is.
Yeah, Jessie's a different breed. There is no doubt about that. And Claudia, I agree with you. To put in your text to everybody an absolute unit. I mean, though the kid is. And I just wonder along the lines as those who have been watching and listening to the show, how mad she is at her friends who all got it in her head that she was going to go early, that she thought she was going to go a week or two early, and she went right up to the due date of February 29th. I think she's, while a little miffed at her friends, finally happy that she doesn't have to send out the text that says at the end, still pregnant. She's done with the pregnancy, so good on her, good on Henry, well done. Her husband, like we said, he was around for a little bit, but we know who does most of the work here.
Absolutely. Got a first-round grade on that baby already based on the tools right now, some of the intangibles that we know about Jessie. Baby's going to interview incredibly well, so I feel really good about the prospect of that baby showing up and showing out at the Combine. So congrats, Jessie. We love you. We sure hope you're all watching and obviously giving Henry the education of GoJo and Golic very early on in this.
Better be.
You got to give him positive role models around here. But congratulations. We're so happy for you. Enjoy like a margarita and some cold cuts. I'll be very curious what the first post-birth meal was. Because, Dad, you know this. We just went through this with my sister, Sydney. All she talked about was craving a sourdough world cold cut sandwich after because of all the litany of things that you can't eat while you're pregnant.
Yeah, it was actually her husband, Ben, actually brought it to the hospital with her so she could have it right after she gave birth. The only reason she didn't have it right before she gave birth because they wouldn't allow her to in the hospital there. I'll be interested what the first meal and or drink is for Jessie. Is it caviar? Has she not been able to have her caviar? I don't know.
Or is it a Baja Blast? Because that's the picture I want to see. I want to see her in the hospital chair with the Baja Blast, the baby in the other arm, and whatever else. The caviar and champagne, but that Baja Blast is what really matters.
Exactly.
That's marketing.
That's
marketing.
We could best say Taco Bell.
Taco Bell?
Not an ad, could be. And also, we need to get DraftKings to set the odds for Jesse's post-birth meal on the DraftKings Sportsbook right now. So we're going to get the odds makers to work on that one while Jesse recovers. Congrats again, guys. We love you. And from celebrating one magical moment, the most magical moment of the weekend, with a couple of others here, Claudia, Caitlin Clark finally went ahead and did. She's tired of breaking all the other records, so she just went for the final boss, grabbed it by the jugular, and said, we're good here.
Yeah, she took control of this. It is a mic'd up Monday here on GoJo and Golic, and you said it, the name on everybody's mind when you think of college basketball right now, it is Iowa star Caitlin Clark, and she broke a record by any man or woman to do in college basketball, beating LSU and NBA star Pistol Pete Maravich for the most points scored by a D1 basketball player. She did it Sunday, her last regular season home game. She did it in the first half, and I'm not going to say it's the worst part of it, but I think we were all waiting for her to do it in what she does best with a three-pointer, but she did it on a free throw. And it's interesting because DK did have the lines for this. Free throw was plus 650. So if you're out there, you have that ticket, please send it to us on Twitter, DM it to us so we know. Let us know on YouTube. 3-point was the favorite at minus 145 and 2-point field goal plus 190. She finished with 35 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 93-83 win for them over Ohio State, who was on a 15-game win streak. So huge win for them. And I think this really shows that, she's a team player. She didn't want it to be about her. She just wanted to get the win. Here's what she had to say on the record.
It's really crazy to think about. Honestly, if you would have told me that before my college career started, I would have laughed in your face and been like, no, you're insane. And I've always been able to score the ball, but I don't think people really understand how many amazing players have come before me and been able to score the ball and do it at such a high rate and do it for teams that are really, really good. And just to be in the same realm of all these players that have been so successful, whether it's Pete or whether it's Kelsey Plum or Lynette Woodard, all these people have just given so much to the game. So, hopefully somebody comes after me and breaks my records and I can be there supporting them. And that's what makes the game of basketball so fun. But yeah, it'll definitely hit me at some point.
Truly a humble queen. The only thing left for her to do is win it all, guys. Iowa tied for the second best odds with LSU. 8-1 to win it all. In South Carolina, the favorite at even money, I should say. I mean, she says all the right things. She does all the right things. And to think this is really just the beginning of us seeing what Caitlin Clark can do.
It was awesome. I'm with you. I thought maybe there's a chance she clanks that free throw and does it in a cooler fashion. Because, Dad, remember, she passed Kelsey Plum hitting a logo three in a move that was somewhat predetermined. That's been her shot, and so she kind of had a flair for the dramatic here. But I think between that, Dan, I thought the coolest part for me was seeing her reaction before the game. Elle Duncan from ESPN interviewed her, and they surprised her with Maya Moore showing up, the former UConn star, one of the greatest women's basketball players of all time. And the genuine yelp from Caitlin Clark when Maya Moore, who was her childhood hero, who she talked about meeting when she was a young woman, and how her influence helped make her the player she is today. And just watching that moment between the two, I think it's always cool to see the generations. And now knowing Caitlin Clark is going to be that for somebody else is a really, really cool full circle moment.
I think you're 1,000% right for her to have that person there of what helped motivate her to all the young ladies out there that are watching Caitlin Clark and being motivated by what she has done is just such a great moment. And this has been so much fun to follow. It was kind of wild the way it happened. There was a actual foul with 0.3 seconds to go in the half. Another one of her players were fouled. And then one of the Ohio State players bumped into Caitlin Clark and got teed up. So there were two free throws with the technical after the free throws by her teammate. And I agree with you. I wondered if she would have clanked him, but it was Ohio State. Ohio State's number 2 in the country. And they had a lead. Iowa had the lead going into halftime, and I'm sure Caitlin Clark was like, we may need every point we can get here. So that thought, if it was a more of a sub team that they were blowing out, maybe she would have thought about that. But not in this one, as they're the 1 and 2 seeds, Ohio State 1 and Iowa 2. As the Big Ten tournament gets rolling. But, kudos to her. Obviously the people she's passed scoring, but the first D1 woman with 1,000 assists, 3,000 points, also the most threes in the season. And then she could have come back next year again, but declared for the draft, and we know how great that'll be for the WNBA when she goes to the Indiana Fever. So it's just a phenomenal story, but for her, man, the only way to put a bow on it is a title, right? I mean, they were the team that knocked off. South Carolina just went through their second regular season undefeated season.
Yeah.
And last year they did that, got to the tournament, and Iowa upset them in the tournament, and LSU ended up beating Iowa in the finals. Now, South Carolina's there again, and if Iowa and Caitlin Clark is going to get what she wants, probably going to have to go through South Carolina at some point again, depending where they are in the brackets, whether they're on the same side or maybe in the finals if they both get that far. But that would be the way for a team sport and a young lady who got so many individual honors for her to end her career with the greatest team victory you can get as a national championship together.
Yeah, and listen, I disagree with Jay Williams that she can't be considered a GOAT without the national title. I think in college basketball,
that's crazy.
Especially with the tournament setup, that's just not as realistic as it is when we do this for other athletes in other sports. I think she's already going to be, like, her legacy is so secure in this sport. Having the conversation almost feels disingenuous because of everything that she's accomplished. But like anything, guys, it's all about the why and the how she's done all this and how she's done it and the flair for the dramatic and the style that she's done it. So much so that we saw during the tournament last year, you had other people. It was call and response. We saw Angel Reese in the championship moment. Other people throwing her own celebrations back at her. She's been so good and done it with so much personality. And I think that's the biggest thing that feels like the building block we've talked on for the next level is you win and sell sports with personality. And the W is fortunate to have so many great women who are such compelling stories. And now you add another one who's coming off all this attention and fanfare. I mean, my God, watching the rollout, Dad, that Nike had ready to go with the billboard, with the commercial ready on Fox right as this was all happening, she's been box office. So now you add this, and the way she makes so many people feel either good in the support they want to have for her, or now the challenge to other players who I'm sure are not going to want to let a rookie come in and be the one dominating play.
And listen, it's always great to break the record whenever you break the record, all the records she was looking for. But I would imagine if you asked her, she would be most happy she got it all out of the way before the conference tournament and before the NCAA tournament, right? Well, so all that is done. All that is put aside. The only thing now is the NCAA tournament. The only thing eluding her illustrious and great career is that national championship. And we may have missed out on the best thing of the whole time of her doing this is Kristen Juszczyk made her a jacket, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, Justin Juszczyk's a wife, Kristen Juszczyk, who's making these incredible jackets, has a deal with the NFL, made Caitlin Clark a vest ahead of her record-breaking performance. So you got that going for you now, too.
No, absolutely. That's what I mean. Everybody wants to be in the Caitlin Clark orbit right now. I think it's been really cool to see how genuine the attention has been around this player. And I think going forward, we kind of saw this to an extent with Sabrina Ionescu coming out of Oregon, where the three ball is such a compelling weapon in the post-Steph Curry version of basketball that now you've got this player that the audacity, I think I saw Dominique Foxworth talked about that the audacity that she plays with is so compelling. And so to watch that now springboard to the next level, coming off the accomplishments like this, where, Dad, to your point, very smartly, she got the WNBA announcement out of the way, she got this out of the way, everything is cleared so it can just be business as usual for her team going down the stretch, as much as that can be with the hype that surrounds her. So now we're going to watch, all right, how does she continue to take that hype to a new level of basketball where the players get even better and the attention will continue to stay on her? She's that box office. She can take a page, Claudia, out of the next record breaker that we saw's book and the way that he has handled that for the entire career.
Yeah, man. Next up on Mic'd Up Monday, we have LeBron James. So I don't think this is a surprise to anybody because all he does is break records, but he broke the 40,000 career points on Saturday, becoming the first player in history to do this. It came against the Nuggets. He headed into this game only needing 9 points. And again, it wasn't anything crazy exciting, but it happened on a layup in the second quarter, finished with 26 points, putting his career total at 40,017. Guys, here's what he had to say about his career after the game.
To be quite honest with you, everybody wanted to see me fail when I got to the league. Everybody was just like, it's no way he's going to be able to exceed, the expectations that's put upon him. Like that expectation on an 18-year-old kid, like that was insane to just think about it. And I was watching it today. I was like, I wish that on no kid in no sport to have this type of pressure put on them, and everybody wanted to see you fail. So
who's everybody? Who wanted to see him fail?
Ooh.
You know what? This is the thing. I don't know why we're surprised by that part anymore.
I'm not, but it's
because we hear that from it almost makes me realize that, oh, maybe I would have been greater if I only acknowledged my haters. Like, if you do everything out of spite, clearly all things are possible. Because what do we hear from every Alabama team, every Georgia team, every Patriot? No one believed in us. Everyone was counting us out. When we know, Dad, that's completely untrue for the most part. But with that much noise, there's always a few dissenting voices. And Dad, you know this better than anybody. Yeah. Athletes are always going to internalize the negative and the doubt and let that be the thing that's the fuel for the engine.
Yeah, the Chiefs are the latest, right, iteration of this by saying nobody believes in us, you know, even though they were actually the underdogs going on the road, but nobody believed in us. But listen, Tom Brady was we talk about it all the time. You find the chip. I listen, I'm sure when LeBron came out, there were those that are like, oh, yeah, look at all the hype for this kid. I hope he falls flat on his face. But I don't recall hearing that a lot. I don't recall. I mean, I think it was more like, can he actually live up to what the expectation is? And oh, by the way, he says, I wouldn't wish that on any of my kids. I would have had no problem you or Jake or Sydney being that great in something coming out of high school and having to deal with it. I say, you know what?
Damn, all right.
I'll take the chance and let you guys deal with the pressure of it. You know, go ahead and deal with that pressure of it. But so I don't, but as you said, this is what players do. They look to what maybe somebody said negative about them. But what this guy has done, he's 40 years old, going to be 40 years old and 40,000 points. It's crazy. Next closest, active players, Kevin Durant at 28,000. The unfortunate thing here is they lost for the 8th straight time against Denver, who swept them last year in the Western Conference Finals. So they're not going anywhere in the playoffs at some point. But to watch what he has done. But he is fun to listen to as far as his comments after some of these milestones on his thought process.
He's just...
the drama.
Always.
The drama of it all.
And that's kind of, honestly... This is all a good reminder. Like, we talked about this the other day after LeBron went off in that fourth quarter and helped them win a game. How we're not going to get that many more of these. The one thing he did say in there that was true was talking about not wanting to put that pressure on anybody else. Because, Dad, well, obviously, I would have liked that too. It would have been really cool to have been that good at anything. It is insane to think about back in that age, even pre-social media, just how much we all knew about LeBron at such an early age, and the way he was written and talked about. I mean, he also tattooed the chosen one on his own back, so clearly understood a little bit of what was coming there. But he is right to have lived up to it at this point at every juncture. I saw Ben Golliver tweeted out the pace at which he accomplished this feat, to the point of LeBron James living up to unprecedented hype. It took him the same number of games to get from 0 points to his first 10,000 points, 368, as it took for him to get his last 10,000 points, from 30,000 to 40,000, 368 games. It didn't take him more than 385 games to get to 10,000 at any of the junctures there. Like, the remarkable consistency across his career through the different team iterations with the Cavs, with the Heat, back to the Cavs, and now with the Lakers, to the multiple championship instances, to the way his games evolved at. I mean, I can remember, when he was in Miami and people talked about LeBron needs to develop a post-up game. And so what does he do? Goes out and develops a post-up game and just continues to add these things to his tool belt. All, by the way, while being one of the greatest assist men in NBA history. It's been a singular experience, and this is a great reminder of that.
I'm trying to think of other players, and maybe you guys can as well, with this much hype at that young age. I remember Bryce Harper being on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 17 years old, as the next one of the next great. And listen, he's lived up to a lot of that. He's been phenomenal in his career. Not LeBron James heights, but he has, because I'm just trying to think of those in high school who were thought of that highly to come out. We certainly had some hockey players because they can play early on in basketball before they had the one and done rule of people coming out like LeBron, of when you can come out of high school and play. But I don't know if there's been one who has had as much on his shoulders and has lived up and probably, I would say, exceeded, right? We would agree, exceeded what was put upon him of what he could possibly be.
Anything you could have dreamed for him, he did, except win last night, which is a good reminder. Coming up next, we got two teams in the NBA that seem hell-bent on making it very unfun for everyone else down the home stretch. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato here. And we're going to get to plenty of NBA conversation last night as the Celtics continue to do their thing. And plenty more has gone on. But, Dad, didn't feel right to get too far in the show without acknowledging the massive loss for so many people around the sports community, but especially everyone over at our former place of work at ESPN and a guy you knew very well, Chris Mortensen, longtime NFL reporter, unfortunately and sadly passed away Sunday morning at the age of 72. Going back to 2016, he had been dealing with late-stage throat cancer and had been battling through that so admirably, while also continuing to do the thing that he loved for so many decades there at ESPN and other stops along the way. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, all these places where he's left such an indelible mark, not only on the places that he's worked, but on the people that he's worked with. Daniel Jeremiah over at the NFL Network did an outstanding job and gave a very tearful homage to Mort during the combine this weekend. But Dad, obviously a guy that you worked with for so long and was just such an incredible teammate.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Mort got to ESPN, I think, in 91, and I got there in 95. We had been teammates from that point on until I left in 2021. You mentioned he was diagnosed in 2016, but he kept on working until finally taking that leave of absence a year or so ago. And would do reports occasionally. And this was a guy that was such a good friend, a great teammate for sure. If you're reading, when you read about him on Twitter or X, where we are now, what you're going to read about him is he's a better person than he was a reporter or an inside man. And he was great at that. He was kind of that pioneer that went from print to TV. And so many have followed, kind of like Mel Kiper with the draft, and then so many followed with breaking down the draft. But Mort was that guy. But Mort was so trusted amongst athletes, that you could tell him, and he was going to do it and not sell you out or anything like that. He was so good at that. And but as I said, a better person. And we worked together so many times. In my time there at ESPN. And he brought a smile to your face. He was fun. He was a great guy, just great to be around, and won just about every award there was out there. He started, his first gig was 1969 at the South Bay Daily Breeze, all the way to winning awards, in the Hall of Fame and everything. So just an incredible career, but more importantly, an incredible person that we lost. Our condolences are certainly to his wife, Mickey, and his son, Alex, in their loss. And he fought the fight, and he kept working through the fight as well, which isn't shocking knowing the type of person that he is. So Mort will be missed.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. You mentioned when he was diagnosed, it was right when I first got to ESPN in 2016, and I mean it was I believe stage 4 throat cancer. It was pretty advanced, and there were a lot of people that weren't sure how much time he'd have left then. And so to see the way that he has lived so fully and doing the job like you mentioned all along the way since that has been so outstanding. Dad, I mean, listen, as a young person who came into this, I grew up watching Mort alongside you and so many other people, and so when you walk into the building there and people like Chris Mortensen not only acknowledge you, but give you the time and treat you like an equal and act like you're supposed to be there. You saw so many of the messages yesterday from young people around the industry who got their validation through someone as accomplished and respected and kind as Chris Mortensen in a way that completely changes their outlook on working in this or can completely change their future in this industry when someone like that treats you like you belong and you're supposed to be there. And the messages that you're seeing over and over again reflect that one. So again, someone who will be sorely missed by everyone involved, who leaves an incredible legacy. You saw Peyton Manning posted the note to him. You mentioned the trust that he had. Peyton said, I trusted him with my move to Denver, with the announcement of my retirement. That was the way, ethically, he was someone. Integrity is the word that jumps to mind when I hear Chris Mortensen's name and see it now. So, rest in peace to the great Chris Mortensen. Like you said, to his wife, Mickey, to his son, Alex, who survived. We're all thinking about and praying for you in what I'd imagine is a tremendously difficult time for them and for so many others that knew him here. And, there's no easy transition, but as Daniel Jeremiah said yesterday, he would want everyone to keep having fun talking about these games, the thing that he loved through all of this. And so we will try and do just that for him today as we look back ahead at everything else that's gone on in the world of sports, Claudia. But we'll start off with a little bit of what went on in the NBA last night here in Boston.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of a heat check because the Warriors needed one, guys, and the Celtics said, we volunteer as tribute to the tune of a 52-point smashing by the Celtics. I mean, there's no other way to put it. The Warriors just gave up. They quieted Steph Curry to the point where he just sat the whole second half. But the interesting point of all of this is that they seem to just let Jaylen Brown do whatever he wants. Draymond Green let him wide open on the three. And Brown said, this is a little bit disrespectful. Listen to what he had to say.
First time it's ever happened to me. Honestly, I was a bit surprised. Took a little bit of adjusting, but I think we just took advantage of whatever that attempt was and just made the best of it. If you want to dare me to shoot, we can do that too. You know what I mean? I thought it was a little disrespectful, but we took advantage of it and we didn't look back.
And then Brown took to X after the game, responding to a clip that Steve Kerr said, you have to pick your matchups. And so he retweeted that saying, most teams should take this strategy, or more teams should take this strategy. I guess he's right, guys?
Yeah, it's every once in a while, Dad, I feel like late in an NBA season when you're trying to tinker with stuff and get ready for, the Warriors postseason run that's likely at this point going to begin in the play-in tournament, you try a bunch of different things out, and people say there's no such thing as a bad idea. Every once in a while, you get reminded that's not exactly true.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's what they did here. They had a plan, a defensive plan to lay off Jaylen Brown and give him the shots, and he made him pay. He ended up 11 of 19 from the field, 5 of 10 from threes, 29 points in the game, and it didn't work. You have to have a strategy going in. You tried this strategy and it didn't work. But I mean, what a bail. What 82-38 at halftime. At halftime of what this game was. To where Curry ended up with 4 points in this game, didn't play in the second half. I mean, I don't know how much more quickly of professional teams, Mike, I've seen the white flag thrown up as quickly as this one was.
Well, Claudia mentioned it too, though. This comes at a time where we were coming off the All-Star break and everyone's going, oh man, the Warriors had won 11 of their last 13. The Lakers and LeBron James, could they put something together? And what did we see in successive days? The defending champion Denver Nuggets ruined LeBron James' 40,000-point night by walking them in the same building they helped usher them out of the Western Conference Finals in last year. And the Boston Celtics put this blitz on a Warriors team who's got the core of that dynasty. Like right now, the gap between, and I understand Oklahoma City won last night in first place in the Western Conference, but until further notice, the gap between Denver, Boston, and everybody else right now seems seismic enough to where, Dad, if that's not the finals matchup, it's a massive disappointment for either one of those teams, because they have been so far and away the best in the regular season. The Celtics record through 60 games right now being 48-12. Boston has won the title 3 of its last 4 times that they've posted better than a 48-12 record by this point in the season. So with Dad, with how complete and deep their team is, the only opponent that we can really talk about as giving them a hard time, or that should on paper, is the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I agree. Right now, it's Oklahoma City, you mentioned first, and then half game behind is Minnesota and Denver. I would be shocked if Denver wasn't the number 1 seed coming out of the West by the time the regular season ends. Again, we have, 40, 50, a few handfuls of games that are left in the regular season. So I agree. I think it's those 2 teams, barring some miraculous run by another team in the NBA. And still, we're Golden State and the Lakers are still right now, still matched up in that 9-10 slot for that one first play-in, where a winner can move on into the playoffs and loser is going to be out. And that's, I think, about as all we can hope for those 2 teams at this point.
It's so weird. We talk about appreciating greatness, but to see the perspective that all of a sudden gets launched in when we've seen great games between those 2 teams, and then you zoom out and realize that they're an anthill right at the foot of these 2 battling titans in the Denver Nuggets and the Boston Celtics. Coming up next, let's start to look back at the Combine from this weekend and an opt-out optic issue. That's a tough word to say. Next.
and Golic, the NFL Combine wrapped up yesterday, and as fun as it was, we got a lot of good sound and video. We wanted to see the top stars participate, but they decided not to. The three top quarterbacks in Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May all did not participate. You had your top wideouts in Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. They also did not participate. It seems like this has been a growing issue, guys, and everybody's talking about it. So I'm curious from your perspective, is this an issue? Is it a growing issue? Or do you get it? They showed enough in the regular season. They didn't have to show up in this spot.
So issue is an interesting word for it, and for who? Because I look at this from the player's standpoint and go, well, no, this isn't an issue. This is a trend. We've seen this, and it's been reflected. We heard comments from a bunch of, anonymous scouts and GMs saying that this is kind of what this generation's life cycle has been with the sport, where we've seen players opting out of college bowl games and different scenarios in that setting to preserve their bodies for the jump to the next level, to preserve for the ultimate prize, which is to get millions of dollars to play the game you've been playing your entire life. And Dad, a lot of guys are now looking at the combine and saying, what do I have to gain from this process? I'll go back and say, I think the pandemic season was a bit eye-opening for a lot of guys who saw Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell not only opt out and not play that year because of the pandemic, but also then not be able to go to the combine. We were so limited in what we could do scouting and still be first-round draft picks that were debated at the top of the draft, one after the other. I think for a lot of guys, it was eye-opening and saying, all right, if I'm considered this good and I've already put this much on tape, then for who, for what? What do I have to do but go there and maybe pull something or have some part of my height, weight, or numbers be nitpicked for the next couple of weeks? And I can't blame them one bit.
Listen, every generation gets tagged with something. This generation, especially in sports and especially in football, gets tagged, and I think unfairly at times, as soft, right? Because the rules have changed in the game to where the big hits are out. That's not the player's fault. That's what the game was. The rules were taken away from there, so that's how they're raised now. And quite honestly, you go from my era, let alone yours, Mike, but my era coming into the league back in '85. Players are, A, they're better athletes, and B, the whole system, they're smarter.
Yes.
And in all honesty, the NFL is butthurt that the players decided to actually make some of their own decisions. Instead of just falling into line with what we've done for always. We've always, you always perform at the combine. Well, you know what? Players all of a sudden thought about it, and agents thought about it and said, just what you said, for who, for what? Why are we doing this? I mean, and you can even go into this. How many head coaches didn't show up to this combine? How many GMs didn't show up to this combine as well? I think they're seeing the players opt out more, so they're less interested in it. And I understand why the league obviously wants to do it. It's because everybody says, well, just go do your pro days. Well, then, the NFL is traveling to a bunch of different pro days. They wanted one spot to get all the information. And I get it. I get it from their side. I understand that. But players are becoming smarter and saying, I heard yesterday, Rich Eisen was having the discussion about, I think at some point they were saying, well, if it isn't going to hurt you too much if you have a bad performance, why wouldn't you do it? To my answer would be, why would you do it? If there isn't going to be a whole lot of impact and you're one of the top guys I'm talking about, why would you do it? I wouldn't do anything there. There are some of me that says I wouldn't do anything on pro day. I have shown you everything I need to show you on film. If you can't look at that and say, this is what I'm going to be in the NFL because you need to see me run around 3 cones, I don't know what I got for you. I get it for the guys that were not considered some of the best. All of a sudden you saw some numbers and you were like, oh, okay, didn't really see that in his play. Let me go back and watch his play again. And some of it still won't fit. Our own guy at Notre Dame, Audric Estime, ran a 4.740, and everybody's like, oh my God. You know what? Go watch him play. Go watch dude play and ask me if you want him on your team or not. Now, at the pro day, I'm sure his whole focus is going to be to try and make that a 4.640 to try and appease everybody. But at the end of the day, man, watch the film. Players are smarter today. They're picking their spots today, and I have absolutely zero issue with it.
I can understand from the NFL's perspective, like you mentioned, we all heard it on the broadcast, Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah and everyone talking about guys' decisions not to do this. And they brought up guys like CJ Stroud and how high he went in the draft and him throwing there and all these things that I don't think are correlated, correlation, causation, I think you can debate some of that stuff, but he didn't get picked number 2 in the draft because he went and threw at the combine. I can say that very safely.
No.
But, Dad, for them, it's become an entertainment product. You saw there's literal butts and seats now at the combine. There's crowds there in Indianapolis in a way that there used to not be. It's a multi-day television event. As we know, you could put the welcome screen to the NFL Red Zone channel. You can put the countdown channel on, and that's going to rate because it's football. And the same is true with this. And so I can understand the NFL, who is, I'm sure, very protective of the year-round football product that they've built for themselves, looking at this and saying, we don't want anything that's perceived as a threat to our business. And part of their business is making sure people are dialed in on this year-round.
See, and this one high-ranking AFC executive that said every step has been eroded over time. Guys opt out of high school games, college games, all-star games, combine, pro days. It's the new normal, the arrogance of it all, and it's only going to get worse. It's not arrogance. It's actually making the decision that's right for you. God forbid these kids make the decision that they think is right for them and they don't, just go along with what you said, jump and how high. That's how it was. When I played, that's how it was. It doesn't have to be like that now. Players are different now. They can have a different mentality. Think of yourself if you go through an interview process and there's a ton of steps to go through and you're one of the best ones out there. Do you need to go through all those processes and still not be the top pickup person at this company, man or woman at this company, because of how great you've shown? I mean, if you don't need to do it all, I asked a couple of guys that ran their 40s, the big guys, and hurt themselves, pulled a quad or pulled a hammy in a different drill. I mean, some don't think it's worth it. And they say, I got my film to watch, and that's fine. So for this AFC executive to say the arrogance of it all, no, the arrogance is you guys. The arrogance is the NFL saying, hey, all you players, come jump for us, come perform for us, and do everything we say you should do, and then we'll give you a grade, and we'll see how it goes at the next level. No. These guys are now saying, you know what, I got a lot of tape out on me right now. You can watch that and decide what you want to do. If you don't want to pick me because of that, we can bring up C.J. Stroud. Did Bryce Young throw?
No.
I don't think Bryce Young threw at the combine. He went number 1 in the draft. Really affected him not to throw. So I don't want to hear it, the arrogance of them. It's a different generation. You have to deal. There are some things I don't like about it all, but one where the players can finally have a voice and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And if it ends up biting you, then you know what, that's lesson learned. But for the most part, as we see with the top players, it's not going to end up biting them one single bit to not go perform at the combine.
Quickly, though, I'm curious if your opinion changes going from the physical, the throwing, and the drill work to not showing up to the media availability because Marvin Harrison Jr. just decided not to go. He's not going to get hurt there, right? So from your perspective, and I'm curious, Senior, since you seem to be against the fact that the throwing drill work, skipping that, you don't think that's a bad thing. But what about the media availability? Just being there to speak and sort of give your answers to these questions that we talked about over the last few days.
Again, don't care. I mean, if we think that somebody's going to hold that against Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft because he didn't talk to you, I mean, is crazy. Now, Claudia, I agree with you. Going to talk to the media, I don't know what the big deal is and why you couldn't do it. I'm with you there.
I mean, you saw some
clown
clown show up there and tried to dunk on Caleb Williams at the beginning of his media availability. Yeah. So there are some people that are going to make that a less than stellar experience and ruin it for everybody else. That's not to blame the rest of the media for that. But I'm with you, Dad. It all feels a little bit silly. But this is a reminder that as this process has gone along, the thing that's happened is a lot of cottage industries have popped up around draft preparation, all this, and there is a very financial reason that a lot of people would like to keep everyone, the players included, believing you need all of this to succeed. You need all of us to help you, the actual talented person in the middle of all this, go and achieve your dreams, because without that, a lot of people make a lot less money throughout this process in the lead up to the draft and after the draft. There are the people in the middle of this that through this process, Dad, you talked about, have wisened up and had to become businessmen and women early in their lives who have looked around and realized, oh, wait a minute, no, I'm the one doing all of this. And so I'm going to call the shots at how it goes because like Future said, you do what you want when you're popping.
special edition of All Weekend Teams with the All Combine edition. And we have to talk about Xavier Worthy because everybody is in person, but also on X. They took to Twitter X to talk about the Texas wideout who smashed the 40-yard dash record with a time of 4:21. Now, of course, you have the Patrick Mahomes and the Zays of the world tweeting himself, Tyreek Hill, 4.2 is crazy. Then Matthew McConaughey, the big Texas guy himself, just saying, wow, period. Hashtag hook 'em. Guys, I mean, it makes sense. What he did was absolutely insane. He has to be number one on your list, right? Or is it a Sam Hartman for you, GoJo?
Listen, you know what? Who's to say at this point as we start doling out the all-weekend team notes? By the way, missed opportunity for Matthew McConaughey. He went with the Owen Wilson wow instead of the, I figured it was going to be a layup, all right. Hashtag hook 'em for him in that moment. So, a little disappointed Matthew McConaughey for not meeting the moment, but Dad, let's talk about the lads that did this weekend. Yeah. All weekend team combine edition, and we are going to go three wide on this. Honorable mention, second team, and first team. And Claudia knew right where I was going on this one. Honorable mention, Dad, I'm going to start this off. Sam Hartman being the only competitor willing to go out there and lay it on the line in the quarterback room. He was the only quarterback to run the 40-yard dash, so much so that we had one of the most insane visuals of all time of him just waiting to catch his breath between reps while America had to catch their breath as soon as he started running. The slow motion shots, Dad, of Sam Hartman running the 40, immediately hitting not just my timeline, but the NFL's Twitter feed, had an entire nation hot and bothered. Dad, I have loved watching NFL media get to meet our large adult son Sam and ooh and ah over those luscious locks.
He has been a lot of fun to get to know. You and I have gotten to know him this year at Notre Dame, and really just such a nice guy as well. And this guy listen, he's not going to be a first-round quarterback. We'll see where he goes. Is it mid? Is it late? Is he undrafted? He wants to play in the NFL, and he knows everywhere he goes, he's going to get his hair talked about and his looks talked about.
The entire weekend, he just got objectified, asked about his hair care, and Dad took it in stride. Like, I know that's not a big thing in terms of the eval, but in terms of the kind of young man you're getting, he wants to go there and talk about football, knows everyone's going to keep badgering him about the hair stuff, and takes it all in stride. It's really impressive to me. And
wait till he gets into that NFL locker room.
Oh, God.
Wait till he gets in that NFL locker room and the ribbing he's going to take in there. Those NFL locker rooms are very, very interesting places to be. So, but hey, he'll be happy to be in one.
It's going to be all fun and games until a bunch of his teammates' moms are in his DMs.
Or is there rookie hazing? Like, they're not going to make him shave the locks? Is there none of that?
Wow.
I mean,
there's going to be a lot of money in those locks. Like, he seems like a Head and Shoulders candidate.
He's going to take all of Mahomes' Head and Shoulders commercials, no doubt, even if he doesn't take a snap for 3 years.
There is no doubt it will be veteran offensive linemen who will want to shave his head. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And that's where I'm going to go with my honorable mention. I'm going the O-line. And this doesn't shock me because it's an O-lineman. Zach Frazier, the center from West Virginia. It's a guy who broke his leg 4 months ago. 4 months ago. And he didn't play in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. He did not practice or play at the Senior Bowl because of his leg. And I think everybody would have understood if he just went to the combine and did interviews. He did on-field drills. Now, he didn't look like you see him when he plays. He didn't look anything like that. He's, again, 4 months from a broken leg. But dude went out there and did all the drills. I mean, this is one in the cap for all those saying, if you're going to go to the combine, do the drills. And this guy just gutted it out. And it does, as I said, doesn't shock me because it's an old lineman. And I remember covering it in the Super Bowl. One of the old linemen, I think for the Chiefs, one in the blue tent. I said a doctor didn't even follow him in. It was his elbow. They put some duct tape, and chicken wire on his elbow, and back in the game you go. Old linemen are just different. And this guy competed with that coming off the broken leg. So kudos to him for going out and giving it a go.
Yeah, as tough as they come. I got to cover a lot of West Virginia games early in his career, and the way that Neil Brown and those coaches talked about him, legitimate program-changing presence. They talked about him as the guy that drove the culture in that offensive line room. And I think when you look at veteran players like him and Sam that might not be the headline names up top, these are two guys that have played a ton of college football, done it at a really high level. Sam Leaves is one of the most accomplished passers in ACC history and college football history. Zach Frazier, an indelible mark on that West Virginia locker room, and both have a lot to offer in terms of that high standard already, that high floor coming into an NFL locker room, even if that's not always the focus at the top of the draft. Second team pick for me, Dad, speaking of pedigree, Ladd McConkey, the wide receiver out of Georgia. I bring Ladd up because I'm glad we got to this moment this weekend where all of a sudden people looked up and went, okay, white wide receiver, probably runs great routes, first guy in, last guy out, gym rat, probably a coach's son somewhere in the mix. We got every euphemism queued up, and then all of a sudden he runs a 4.39, and it's the fastball brushing everyone back off the plate a little bit, going, oh, wait a minute, that's not in the script for the white wide out coming out of Georgia. But anyone who's watched him, Dad, Lamb McConkey has been remixing dudes in the Bulldogs uniform for years now and seems to be steadily climbing up. This is the comp that I loved, and I saw Daniel Jeremiah threw it up there. Garrett Wilson, in terms of measurements. I love a comp in the draft for him that doesn't skew along racial lines, and Garrett Wilson's an excellent one considering what they've both done as college players.
This guy, he was fun to watch there, but he's fun to watch on the field. Finds a way to get open. It's just amazing catching pass after pass, how he does it. But precise route running, great hands, yards after the catch. It's a good pick. I look forward to him at the next level. My second teamer is going to be the edge rusher from Penn State, Chop Robinson, who, listen, as I said, you go here as an interview, whether I like the full thought of the combine or not. Players, you go there and you're asked to do events. If you're going to do the events, then man, be ready for them and do them as best you can. So he was over 250 pounds, which was first surprising. They thought he was going to be in the 240s. And he ran a 4.48 40, which was great. But again, I don't care about a 40 for an edge rusher, a D lineman, or an O lineman. He ran a 1.54 10, and that's tied for fourth fastest since 2003 for a player over 250 pounds. So that to me is the impressive thing. You go there, you do the interview, you choose to do the event, and you do it to the tune of tying for the fourth best since 2003. And one of the things that I think does relate is get off, is 10 yards. How quickly can you get to 10 yards, which is like, turning the corner and getting to the quarterback. So good workouts for Chop Robinson.
Listen, if you are a physical freak, going to the combine's a great way to get some buzz about you. And Chop Robinson, like a lot of the rest of those Penn State front seven guys, a physical freak. Which leads me to my first team all weekend pick. And you knew it was going to skew big boy because they put Sunday in prime time for the offensive line because they know ratings, thick sells, and it happened here again. And there's a bunch of guys you could go, like Talisi Fuaga and Troy Fautanu, the offensive linemen out of Oregon State and Washington, respectively. Both had banner days. Both got talked about a ton. But in my mind, Dad, we're always going to be part of the top four of the offensive linemen in the draft. They were already first rounders in my mind. My first team all weekend pick goes to Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia, for just showing up and being big. He checked in at 6'8", 340 pounds. Not his weight in the program, his combine weight, with 36 1/8 inch arms, 11 1/4 inch hands, is an absolute massive humanity. You saw the picture of him next to all the media members. The guy's built like a Greek god at 340 pounds. Tweaked his hammy in the 40, so we didn't get to see as much of him on field as we wanted. But Dad, he's going to be compelling. Not a lot of snaps under his belt. Was injured a bunch this year for Georgia. But an incredible sized athlete, a real easy mover, and a guy who's got, I think, his best football still well ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, what a specimen. Some of these guys, I mean, Joe Alt from Notre Dame is just a tick under 6'9" and weighed 321. Just the look of these guys and the way they can move is absolutely amazing. Listen, my number one, to Claudia's point when she brought up Xavier Worthy, is anybody going to have him as a guy? Yes, I am. Xavier Worthy is my first teamer. I mean, as I said about Chop Robinson, you go there, you decide to do the interview, in this case, the 40. Now, it is a guy that had 75 catches, over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns for Texas this year. But there were, he was 5'11", 165. So if you're going to be that small, you better move. And he moved to the tune of, as Claudia had mentioned, setting a record in the 40 at 4.21, which is just unbelievable. So you set a record there of all the players that have done this over all the years, and you are now the fastest to ever do that. You get my vote on the first team.
He moved the fastest at the combine. He moved the needle ratings-wise for the crowd inside there. Coming up next, we'll check in with ESPN's Matt Miller and see how high he might move up draft boards with that kind of time. Next on GoJo Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, hour number 2 as we get rolling here, and still plenty of meat on the bone to break down from the NFL Combine this last weekend. And as we turn our eyes back on some of the great performing young players who are getting ready to take that next step, we're going to bring in the reinforcements to help us break it on down. A guy who was boots on the ground in Indianapolis, but did not succumb to the vices that most of the rest of the crowd there does. ESPN NFL draft analyst Matt Miller, kind enough to join us now at NFL Draft Scout on Twitter, is where you can follow him. And Matt, you're one of the rare people on Monday morning coming off the week in Indianapolis actually feeling pretty good right now.
No, I'm not doing bad. I was telling you guys off air, when you have those 6:30 a.m. wake-up calls to do SportsCenter, you make yourself go to bed at night. And so I like to think that I'm maturing finally at 40 years old and making the right decisions, so that, you know, I came home, it's 80 degrees in Southwest Missouri. I came home and sat on the porch last night and I feel good. So I'm like you said, I don't know how the other media members are feeling today, but I'm coming out here on top this year.
Pretty impressive because, yeah, a lot of them go there and say, okay, it's party time. I got to see how long I can last in this town party. And so good for them, but good for you and feeling good when you're coming home. So good for what players out there? Is there a player or is there a position group that you watched and either changed your mind or made you go back and do more work on them? What were the top things you took away?
Yeah, that's what I'll do all week, is to revisit, my notes and compare it to my pre-combine rankings. And you try to see, like, okay, what questions got answered or what new questions do I have? I think as far as position groups, we knew this wide receiver class was freaking awesome. And it was, as expected. You have Xavier Worthy breaking the 40 record with a 4.21 second and the 40-yard dash, and which weirdly overshadowed the great performances of guys like Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU and Adonai Mitchell from Texas, who I think both solidified themselves as top 20 picks, not just because they ran 4.33 and 4.34 respectively at over 6'2", but the on-field workout was great. And I know you guys really just want to talk about offensive linemen. So the offensive line group, like, this is probably the best offensive line group I've ever studied. I started back at Bleacher Report in the 2011 draft, was my first one. This is the best O-line group I think I've ever seen. And they tested like that. They performed that way. I mean, from Joe all the way on down, this is such a special group. And watching the offensive linemen yesterday, it's like I ran out of room on my paper to talk about how many of these offensive linemen I'm falling in love with the more I get to watch them.
Who had the best combine from that group? Because you mentioned we've heard names like Joe Alton, Olu Fashanu out of Penn State for a while now. Olu could have come out last year and been one of the top offensive linemen. Joe's had a lot of that press, but who stuck out from that group outside of maybe those top two names that people have gotten to know so much?
Yeah, I mean, Amarius Mims, I walked by him in the conference center. I've never seen 6'8" and 340 pounds. It's clean. It's just, he looks like a statue. He looks like he was carved out of marble. And I know he got hurt yesterday. And that's honestly, that's the question with him. Coming out of Georgia, he has 8 starts, but those 8 starts are as good as any film you're going to see. So I think he won the combine before we even stepped onto the turf. But 2 guys I'll highlight. Cooper Beebe from Kansas State looked exceptional in the drill work. And I think that's, we all get fascinated with the 40 and the bench press, but the field work is, in my opinion, what matters most. Cooper Beebe was flawless. And then Zach Frazier from West Virginia, this dude broke his leg the final game of West Virginia's season and we were at the Senior Bowl a month ago. He was trying to play in the Senior Bowl in late January, and his agents were like, no, you don't need to do this yet. And so 1 month later, he's at the combine doing field work, coming fresh off a broken leg. So Zach Frazier, not just because of, the workout that he did, but the heart, getting a chance to get to know him a little bit. That's one of my dudes. If you need a center in this class, there are a lot of good ones, but Zach Frazier's the man. 4-time state wrestling champ in high school as well. And I mean, you guys know this better than I do. If you can be a 4-time state wrestling champ, you could probably handle interior offensive line in the NFL pretty well.
Love a guy that has a wrestling background. I think it helps so much on the football field. I will always champion that cause. Matt, I'm looking at a mock draft you had a month ago, and in that you had 9 offensive linemen, 7, I think, tackles, a guard and a center, 6 wide receivers, 5 quarterbacks, and 5 cornerbacks. So of the 32 picks, you had 25 of them going to 4 positions. How much normally for you does your round 1 change after you go to the combine, after you rewatch some film again? How much does it usually shift?
Not a whole lot, honestly, because I feel like those are the dudes who we've known about. We've known about Caleb Williams. We've known about Drake May. You mentioned Fasciano and all. We've known that those are the dudes. So, there might be a handful of guys, I'll get Nate Wiggins in the top 32. He ran really, really well at the combine and kind of solidified some of the things that, he's undersized at 173 pounds as a corner, but he runs a 4.28. So that'll probably get him into the top 32. I think what changes it more than anything, free agency starts in a week. The NFL it's all downhill after the Super Bowl, and you're going 110 miles an hour. Free agency will start next week. That's when things will really shift because you start to get into need more than anything. But you nailed it. The positional value in this draft class specifically matches up beautifully. We're going to see 4 to 5 quarterbacks. We might see 8 wide receivers, which would be a record. We might see 9 or 10 offensive linemen. And you start to add that up. It's okay, are we going to even see 10 defensive players drafted in the first round? And that's not because there aren't some great defensive players. There's a lot of good corners. There's a lot of good pass rushers, but tackles, wide receivers, quarterbacks are going to dominate the first 32 picks.
I do want to get to some of those defensive players because I think you mentioned some performances that got overshadowed. There were some defensive players that really showed up and put the physical gifts on display, but Caleb Williams, this quarterback class, so much got made of Caleb Williams and what he elected not to do at the combine, when him and some of the other prospects didn't do. As you're around there talking to people, Caleb Williams obviously talked with some teams, met with them, met with the media. What was the impression you got of the NFL opinion on Caleb coming off of this weekend?
Everyone I talked to absolutely loved him. And personal story, it's an afternoon. You guys have done this. You know how it is. I'm waiting to do a Sports Center hit. So you're sitting there in a chair, holding a microphone, ton of lights around you. And Caleb walks by and he kind of peeks in to see what we're doing. I was like, hey, I know that they would rather have you on Sports Center than me right now. You want to do this hit? And so he just starts joking around and you're oh no, you already got the suit on. People want to hear from you. And just, had a fun little back and forth. I did my hit. And he was still standing off to the side. So I just went and introduced myself, had a brief conversation. I mean, very brief conversation, but I found him to be funny, engaging, confident, but humble. And that echoes everything I heard from, friends at NFL Network who interacted with him, friends at ESPN who got a chance to interview him. And then every team that he did meet with told me they really liked the kid. And I think a lot of people, you almost wanted to not like him because there has been so much almost sabotage of his character. And I wouldn't even say it's in the media. It's just on social media. It's the unnamed sources and the aggregator accounts who have put out these stories about him that just don't mesh with reality. So I was really happy that he sat down with Pete Thamel, a guy who I'm really lucky to work with, and kind of told his story and finally used his own voice this week to kick off the combine. Basically said, I'll go to Chicago. I like deep dish pizza and Michael Jordan. But then he's just excited to be in the NFL. He's dreamed to be in the first overall pick his whole life. He's not going to do anything to change that process.
So going back to your mock draft a month ago, as I mentioned, 5 quarterbacks: Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy. The guy who I think could end up being the best of the group of quarterbacks, tell me why he's not in this group, Michael Penix Jr.
The only 2 reasons. The biggest reason is the medicals. 4 years at Indiana before he got to Washington. Each season ended with a season-ending injury. He's had 2 ACL injuries to his right knee, and he's had an injury to each shoulder. And so that is concerning. And I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. I'm going to wait and talk to NFL team doctors about what they saw in the medical scans at the combine. That will be the difference between a first and a second round grade for him. And I think for myself as well as others, I talked to one source at the combine who said, Michael Penix Jr. is a thumbs up or thumbs down guy. If he's healthy, it's thumbs up and it's all systems go. But it might be a thumbs down. And at quarterback, shoulder injuries are scary situations. So we'll see. But I'm with you. It's as far as watching the workouts, no quarterback had a better workout than he did. He's got a huge arm. He's one of the few dudes that can throw that 25-yard out on a rope and put it the wide receiver's not waiting. He's keeping everything in bounds. So the other question would be mobility. We saw against Texas when he was clean, playing behind that Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, no one could stop him. But we saw him again against Michigan when they did make him move, and he really struggled. And that is the rub with him is in the modern NFL, can you change his game? Can he change his game to where if he has to move his feet, can he keep his accuracy on point? Because that was really the only issue at Washington was when he had to move. When he's not a lower body thrower. Everything is upper body with him. So when he has to move his feet, can he stay accurate? And it's something he didn't do in college. I'm not saying he can't learn to do it in the NFL, but that's the big question mark.
He single-handedly fueled the economy of the word spin this weekend because I heard over and over, no one spins the rock
right.
quite like Michael Penix Jr. this weekend. The other interesting one, and I saw a lot of takes, Dan Orlovsky, your colleague at ESPN, came out and said he'd take Jaden Daniels, number 1, the quarterback out of LSU. I'm curious, we didn't see a lot from Jaden this weekend, even the measurables, since obviously weight's a concern for some people, but where do you see him slotting in with these top quarterbacks?
I think he'll be the number 2 overall pick as long as his interviews went well. Interestingly enough, so you asked about Caleb. Here's an anecdote for you, and you can take whatever you want from this. Players who don't participate in the combine, like a Caleb Williams, they often stay and support their position groups while they're working out. Jaden Daniels did not do that. He was gone. He didn't weigh in. I think he came in and did his media availability and then left because he was not on the field watching the quarterbacks and wide receivers work out. So as much as we hear about, Caleb this, Caleb that, that's just an anecdote for you. I love Jaden Daniels as a player. I watch him and I think he's the most improved guy I saw in college football from 2022 to 2023. He learned how to play in the pocket better. His deep ball passing, for all the greatness that Michael Penix Jr. has as a deep ball passer, Jaden Daniels was better. He had a QBR of 99.5 on deep passes. He had 22 touchdowns to 0 interceptions on deep passes. Sure, it helps that you have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., but the running ability in the 2 years in the SEC, over 1,000 yards rushing. He answered all those questions. To your point, weight is going to be an issue. He's listed at 210. I think he's probably a lot closer to 185, but at the pro day, I'm sure he's going to be full of water and Gatorade, and he's probably never going to be able to look at a peanut butter sandwich again in his life without gagging a little bit. But you only got to weigh once. It's like the 40. You got to do it one time if you do it well. Same with weighing in. You got to weigh in once. That number is going to sit next to your name for the rest of your career. So I think the pro day weight will be big. But, we saw over the course of last year, watch Florida State week 1, they're ragdolling the guy. They're just throwing him. It's like WWE. Later in the year, he started to protect himself better. So that's going to be part of his game that he has to figure out of how to slide, how to be like Lamar Jackson and get skinny at times so that you aren't a clean hit for some of these guys. But that's going to be the next evolution of his game. But I think he's a top 3 pick all day.
Watching players chug water at their pro day before their weigh-in is one of the great things to ever see.
Is one of
These
the most
guys chug in
feelings.
or chug it, weigh in, and then have to go pee before they do anything else. It is absolutely hilarious to watch. On the defensive side, you look at one of the big positions is obviously that edge rusher, and the top 2 are Dallas Turner from Alabama, Jared Verse from Florida State. How do they rank in some of the past classes of edge rushers that we can look forward to what they do in the NFL?
Yeah, I think they compare I'll say better than last year as a frame of reference. We saw Will Anderson go number 3 overall. I think Dallas Turner is a similar type of player, not as big. He's about 10 pounds lighter. He's faster than Will Anderson Jr. And I would take Jared Verse over Tyree Wilson, who went 7 overall to the Raiders and had not much of a rookie year because of a lingering foot injury. But they are both absolute studs. And, to both come in, Jared Verse was under 4'6" at 260 pounds. That's his game. He's everything that you want in a true 4-3 defensive end. And it is wild that in this draft, we're talking about those guys might not go in the top 10 because of, as we said, the quarterbacks, tackles, wide receivers are going to load up the top 10. And we have 2 guys who have been nothing but productive in college, great backgrounds, great character, great athletic testing, and they might not be top 10 picks at arguably the second most important position in football. So they are great. And no, like Dallas Turner isn't Myles Garrett, and he doesn't have the size of one of the Bosa brothers, but he is a special pass rusher who had tons of production. And you watch him play and you see the length and you see the speed. And then we go to the combine and you see like an 83-inch wingspan with 4.46 speed. Like that's freakish ability. And then the measurables match it up and tell you, okay, what I saw on tape matches with who he actually is. So they should be top 10 picks, guys. But right now, because of how great the offensive side is, some team in the teens might get a steal.
Like I say, those guys, Liatu Latu out of UCLA with some of the injury background that he had as well and what he was able to put on tape this year. Those guys are great. And you mentioned those are other names that people have kind of known, big-time college football players. I want to talk about Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo as one of the guys that people probably need to get to know and maybe didn't watch a ton of Toledo football and are starting to hear his name now coming off the Senior Bowl, coming off the Combine. What's the secret sauce of his game?
Man, it's everything. Speed, power at the line of scrimmage, length. We were at the Senior Bowl day 1 of practice, and I tweeted this. You have Quinyon Mitchell too low in your mock drafts. And then when he ran that 4.33 the other night, I retweeted it and was like, now you really have him too low in your mock drafts because he could be the first corner off the board ahead of, a couple guys from Alabama and ahead of Nate Wiggins from Clemson and ahead of the great duo of Missouri. Mitchell is, he's the total package. You watch him. Watching him on tape, you see how great he is, but you're like, it's Toledo. They're not playing anyone. When we got to the Senior Bowl and he started rocking dudes off the line of scrimmage, I thought he was going to break some collarbones because he's so physical in his snap and the way he presses. But then you're like, okay, well, if he's that physical, can he run? He ran the fastest 40 time of any corner at the Combine. 4.33 is one of the top 5 times we had this year. So he is a special player. You're right. I think we all know guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry because he's at Alabama and it's the cool nickname. And Terrion Arnold had a great year for the Crimson Tide, but there's a great possibility that Mitchell's drafted ahead of any corner that you came into the year hearing a ton of hype about.
Matt, there's a guy that from his first game in college, we said, man, we can't wait to see where he goes in 3 years. And that's Brock Bowers. Starting as a true freshman, I'll never forget that game playing against Clemson, and he was a main focal point of the game plan from the jump. And he is a 2-time Mackey Award winner, multiple-time All-American, head and shoulders the best tight end of this draft. We saw what rookie tight ends, Dalton Kincaid had 73 catches, Laporta breaking records, had 86 catches for Detroit. What do you think of Brock Bowers going to the next level?
Yeah, guys, I think if we made a list of the 5 best football players in this draft, we put Brock Bowers on there. Unfortunately, when you talk about the draft, it's about how tall are you, how fast are you, and positional value because of how much you're paying guys. I think that's going to knock him down to where, that first round in Detroit, we could be talking about him on the board in the middle of the first round. A team like the Indianapolis Colts at 15 could get an absolute steal because of teams are going to, go for the quarterbacks, tackles, those high value dollar positions early. And I think for Brock, he's not the biggest guy. I was really impressed that he came in over 6'3". You guys were talking about, that legendary pee you get to take after loading up on water. I'm sure as soon as he weighed in, that was an epic moment in his life because he came in pretty bulked up. I was surprised by it. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see him work out. That's always the player's decision. I'm always going to, applaud. Every player has a unique journey, a unique path. You got to do what's best for yourself because you only get one shot at this. But we didn't get to see him work out at that size. I think the Georgia Pro Day, he will be, if he weighs in at the Georgia Pro Day, he'll be quite a bit lighter. But to come in over 6'3" was the biggest measurable for him. He came in 6'3" and 1/8, and that was huge for him. But as a pure football player, he's a George Kittle, Sam Laporta like dude. You can move him all over the offense. Hell, Georgia played him at running back at times. They just needed to get the ball in his hand. So he can do everything that you could ever want an offensive weapon to do. He just doesn't have that Kyle Pitts type size or athleticism. But, you mentioned two dudes who came into the NFL and immediately were top tier target guys on their offense in Laporta and Kincaid, and he can have that same type of impact.
It smells like value, and I think this time of year, that's what everyone's hunting when you get into the first round, and that kind of a weapon where he might fall to. Going to be some very happy team and fan base come draft day. Matt, we're glad you survived the combine with minimal damage. We appreciate all the time and insight, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you down the road as we get the march towards the draft in April. Thanks, brother.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
God, Dad, all this talk about peeing
Matt,
has me really going back to my pro day. I was really working hard to get to 300 pounds. You remember, that was the number for me. I'm eating 6,500 calories a day and chicken and ricing myself to death. But that build up to that, and then you have to run after. Like, I was sort of laughing at some of the guys in here. J.J. McCarthy, who wasn't going to run, weighed in at 219 after being listed a lot lighter than that. His pee had to be incredible. I had to run after that. I had to offload all that water weight and then go run a 5.38 slow-ass 40. So please, thoughts and prayers aren't required, but they were appreciated back then. I put in work.
It is something to watch. Your brother Jake had to do the same thing at tight end to be like right around 250 or 255. You drank a lot of water, but it's funny. Everybody's got that jug of water to just chugging. I don't know how you guys run after that without, well, we've seen you pee yourself in your football pants. I'm surprised you didn't pee your grays in the in your pro day.
It's like the scene in Beer Fest. Everyone just leaned up against the wall in the Goog facility at Notre Dame, all breathing that deep sigh of relief, knowing, as Matt said, we never got to weigh in again.
Golic, breaking news as of a few minutes ago. Mike Evans staying in Tampa, according to Adam Schefter. The team agreed with Evans on a 2-year, $52 million deal with $35 million guaranteed per his agent, which brings us to our Cash It or Trash It segment presented by DraftKings, because if you had a ticket on Evans to stay in Tampa, which was the favorite at minus 150, you can cash that, guys, and stay tuned because we'll hear more about DraftKings and all of the markets they have to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. But let's talk about this because we've been hearing all the rumblings about Evans and his agent wanting an elite quarterback heading into this season. Now, is that Baker Mayfield? Is that another quarterback? As far as we know now, it will be in Tampa. What do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, Dad, for me, this is, first off, the right outcome. If you're Tampa Bay, for what Mike Evans has meant to your franchise, we've talked about the 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's a walk-in Hall of Famer in the future. Him finishing his career in a Buccaneers uniform is the right way to go for all of this. But the dominoes that start falling now, we just talked to Matt Miller, and he said, post-combine, the NFL is going to hit the ground running right now. This, to me, strong indicator that if you're the Bucs, you're going to make sure Baker Mayfield also is not walking out of that building so long as Mike Evans is going to be there, and you've got this core of the team that surprised a lot of people last year.
Absolutely agree, and I don't think it's going to be some long-term deal for Baker either. I think it'd be more than 2 years. But yeah, I think this was the right move for Tampa, who just look at their free agent list. Remember, they stole from Peter to pay Paul while Tom Brady was there, and it was going to catch up with them, and it did. I think they had over $80 million in dead money at one point, and they were going to have to kind of regroup. But they still have a shot, in that division. It's not a great division, and they won it last year. So to bring Evans back, I absolutely agree with you that they're going to bring Baker Mayfield back as well. What's interesting now to me is what some of the other free agent wide receivers get, Mike. We know T. Higgins, he got tagged. Michael Pittman's probably going to get tagged with the Colts as well. You have Calvin Ridley, Odell Beckham Jr., Michael Thomas as other free agents, who I don't know if teams are going to go, yeah, I got to get one of those guys when you have such a deep position of college players coming out at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, they're slowly running into the running back problem where this glut of talent is all of a sudden going to create a market that's for the buyers here, really, where all these teams are going to look around and go, well, I can get young and cheap in the draft, pretty deep in the draft, with a lot of the talent that we're seeing come out right now. So Mike Evans, I think, was the one name, and so many people this offseason, the theme we're going to see, whether it's Mike Evans right now, whether it's Tyron Smith, the left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys, who it sounds like is going to get to test true free agency coming off the combine, everyone's just going to mention the Chiefs first because it's the easiest thing to say. All right, well, wide receiver was an issue there. Tackle was a bit of an issue there. Both of those guys, Mike Evans' name heavily talked about with the Kansas City Chiefs. Tyron Smith, if he is not a Chief at the end of all this, I'll be stunned, since Dallas is going to let another guy who is a probably potential Ring of Honor guy, a for sure Hall of Famer, and should be finishing his career in a Cowboys uniform. That's shameful on their part, and I'm stunned they're letting it happen. But all benefit for the Chiefs there. But that's how it goes, Dad. When you're the champion, you've got some clear and obvious needs on a team that's the back-to-back Super Bowl champion. You're now veering into Patriots territory for them, where all of a sudden you're going to get a bunch of guys at the end of their career who are talented veterans at the right spot, latching onto the side of this winner, trying to go out there and get a ring.
Yeah, and for Mike Evans, we don't know what the motivation was. We heard, as we mentioned, that he wanted to play with an elite quarterback, that he wanted to get another ring. Now he has one. He's accomplished about everything you can individually and as a team as well by getting that Super Bowl ring. So, at some point, is it the money of this deal? $35 million of it is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Of the $52 million. I don't know about you, Mike, but I don't know if he was getting that money somewhere else. I don't know if he was. So he's obviously comfortable in Tampa Bay. His whole career's been there. And for a couple of years, he's getting some powerful coin there.
Hey, listen, rich, comfy, and in an NFC South that's an infinitely winnable division right now that you seem to be in the driver's seat on, not a bad place to be in life. That's the Mike Trout thing right there, obviously outside of the winning part, but the rich and comfortable part works out pretty good. Dad, you talked about high priority free agents here. And Claudia, this is an interesting segue into Kirk Cousins, who seems to really be the main domino in what's going to be the rest of an interesting quarterback offseason.
Yeah, and right now you can see with the odds, the Vikings are the favorite to keep him, but he's been in the conversation with the Atlanta Falcons, and this came from a report by The Athletic, Diana Russini. She said the Falcons believe Cousins is the type of player who moves them from a fringe playoff team to a contender. Now, like I mentioned, DK has the odds up Vikings, the favorite at -200, but the Falcons edging close to them, guys, at +190.
Dad, this could shape up to be one of the most interesting springs the NFL's had as like a drama and entertainment product in a while when you look at Kirk Cousins, this known commodity, this hero at the bank quarterback, coming off an injury at 35 years old, and still a guy that people covet enough in this way. With the Falcons, obviously, there's a lot of guys from that Shanahan-McVay tree who have all had an affinity. We know Kyle Shanahan loved up on Kirk Cousins for a long time, wanted that. But with Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, who have some of that DNA, you can see why he'd be an important piece. But, Dad, I say that because the domino with him involves Baker Mayfield, who we were just talking about, where all of a sudden, if Atlanta reaches and goes and grabs a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, now Baker Mayfield is alive for maybe the Minnesota Vikings, who are looking to replace a quarterback there. I saw Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler at ESPN mention, hey, maybe the New England Patriots take a stab at a guy like Baker Mayfield if Tampa Bay's not going to pony up all this money. And when you combine that with a lot of these teams, the Patriots included, having top 3 picks, Dad, it creates an environment where there is so much room for, if one domino moves and Kirk Cousins really seems to be the leader in that, all of a sudden we could have a flurry of events that make this draft season a ton of fun.
Well, I think the two teams, it wouldn't shock me for New England to get a young quarterback and kind of start over again because they were just horrible. But it wouldn't surprise me for a team like Minnesota or Atlanta to go more for that veteran because we haven't mentioned the name Justin Fields. If he's not going to be in Chicago, he's going to be somewhere. But, you know, you look at a place like Atlanta, which we just mentioned, the NFC South, and what a kind of a mediocre conference that is, with the winner being 9-8, actually them in New Orleans 9-8. So Atlanta can be right there to win the division. You would be better off with a quarterback like Kirk Cousins. We see these quarterbacks playing later. He could get a few more years there as well. I don't see him getting out of Minnesota, though, because I think Minnesota could be a contending team. It's Detroit right now in that division. You know you got to sign Justin Jefferson, does Minnesota. I think they're $41 million under the cap or something like that as well. So they have some money to spend. So it will be interesting with Kirk Cousins, a guy, Mike, who, as everybody well knows, has won the business side of the NFL so well over his career in what he has gotten paid after getting franchised 2 years in a row and the deals he's gotten since. It's been pretty impressive.
Well, Kirk Cousins has bet on himself, and it's easy to bet on yourself when you're safe, you're bonds, you're proven. I think that's why Kirk Cousins, and this is going to sound weird to say for the guy that's been seen shirtless with his chains off, but the sex appeal of Kirk Cousins as far as a quarterback process is you know what you're going to get from him. And as we talk about, Justin Fields is the perfect foil where you're buying a little bit more of a risky asset right now. He's coming off, He's a depressed asset that gained a little bit of momentum coming off the end of the season, has all these physical gifts. But if you're a team, especially the Falcons, looking to come in with a new regime and set the foundation, Kirk Cousins is the perfect quarterback for that. We can debate about the Kirk Cousins getting you over the hump stuff, and that's what he was brought to Minnesota to do, right? They came off that Final Four playoff run in 2017. They did it with backup quarterbacks, and they said, hey, Kirk Cousins is going to be the guy to get us over the top. And he hasn't done that, but he can come in and set the floor with the best of them. And even coming off injury, he's going to have suitors because of that. And you're right, Dad. While Chicago said, hey, we want to do right by Justin Fields, Ryan Poles put it out there on State Street at the Combine, they're not really going to, I'd imagine, get a ton of action on that until the Kirk Cousins conversation is decided one way or the other.
Well, I agree. And that's what we said. What starts to settle from the free agent side of quarterbacks before we decide, you know, what the draft is going to be. I don't know if you agree, but it's 3 people. It's Kirk Cousins, it's Baker Mayfield, and it's Justin Fields. As far as where are they going to end up, as far as what the rest of how the rookie quarterback class is going to be divvied up. But and I think it's going to be kind of mundane. I do think Cousins is back in Minnesota, and I think Baker is back in Tampa Bay. So I think they're going to stay where they are. So it's really going to be about where Justin Fields ends up.
God, this reminds me of the Mayan calendar stuff that went on when I was in middle school, where everyone's like, it's the end of the calendar, it's the end of the world. And then we all woke up the next day and it went on business as usual, and it may just well at the end of free agency and the draft process here in 2024.
coming to the NFL, including changes to kickoffs to put more emphasis back on the actual returns. And we're going to break down some of the specifics here, but having to declare onside kicks is part of this, which we will get to because I know some people's panties up in a bunch about that one. But I guess this makes sense, right? Only 20% of kickoffs and free kicks after safeties were returned during the 2024 season. Some of the keys summed up by NFL reporter Albert Breer. No one but the kicker and return men can move until the ball is touched by the returner. Number two, if the ball doesn't cross the 20 in the air, it's treated as of out of bounds. It goes to the 40. If kicked into the end zone on the fly, touchback comes out to the 35. And if the return team lets it roll into the end zone, the touchback goes to the 20. Thoughts on this one, guys? I guess it makes sense to try and put an emphasis, like I said, on the returns, but curious what you guys think.
Yeah, so, Dad, this is an interesting one. And as we've talked about the XFL, the USFL, some of these alternative leagues that have popped up over the years, a lot of the utility has been as a testing ground for some of the NFL's future policies on special teams in particular, because we know this is an area, like you mentioned, where there's a ton of injuries. The NFL has been trying to cut down on those. We know concussions are a big time focus. And Dad, we've seen, I know Sam Schwartzstein, who's done a great job, former Stanford offensive lineman who's worked with, Amazon and all these places and was a part of some of these kickoff changes in the XFL. It is about getting the return back as a meaningful part of football. It's been one of the most exciting plays in sports. Hell, we just had Devin Hester go into the Hall of Fame as a return man, partially for that reason. And so, Dad, I understand this and the kickoff as part of the middle ground of, hey, we want to see more of this play that we know is the flashbulb play at the start of the Super Bowl, puts butts in seats, while also trying to do our best in this collision sport to reduce injuries. The kickoff portion of it, I don't have as much of a problem with. What's your thought on that?
Well, I want the kickoff return back in the game. So my thought would be, if you want that, have it the normal kickoff lineup like you have, but put in those touchback rules. If you want returns, line up normally like a kickoff, and if you kick it into the end zone, the other team gets it at the 35-yard line. If you let it roll into the end zone, they get it at the 20. So it would still promote returns, but do you want returns at those high collisions? And they've changed. I mean, back in the day, you had guys running down. You want to Google some of that. There would be the wedge. You would get three guys together running up on the kickoff return, and a guy in a kickoff team would actually leave his feet and turn sideways and just try and bowl over that wedge. It was unreal. Now, obviously, that's been taken way out of the game. And if injuries are up on kickoffs, then, Mike, I'm all for this. When you see the XFL, the way they lined up and did it, everyone's like, wait, what are you doing? But my thought would be, you're still getting returns. So you line up the players on the 40 and the 35, and they can't move until the receiver catches a ball or whatever it's going to be. At least you get a return. So I have no problem if they want to put that rule in like that so we get returns again, because I think it's a huge part of the game.
And one thing we've always talked about this that I think is still important is this still puts a premium on the special teams jobs. Matthew Slater, who just retired here, one of the greatest special teams players in NFL history, should also be a Hall of Famer, made his career running the four-core special teams. And so for this, it still puts a premium on guys being able to go out and execute. It just changes some of the skill sets, because now you don't have guys building up all of this momentum with them not being able to move until the return man's got the ball in his hands. So I agree. It keeps the emphasis and the importance on those jobs. It doesn't change that. Strategically, changes a ton. And for special teams coordinators who are already neurotic and a little bit crazy, I'm sure this is going to keep them up at night for the rest of the offseason. Dad, the one thing that super sucks in all of this is what they're trying to do to the onside kick. The idea of having to declare, because again, within this rule, if the ball doesn't go past the 20, it then comes out to the 40-yard line. And so that's a massive swing. That's like it going out of bounds, and that affects the squib kicks that we see late in the game that are designed to milk some of the clock, but certainly things like the surprise onside kick. And Dad, for all of us that remember, and it's so indelibly linked to Sean Payton and what he did in the Super Bowl, the surprise onside coming out of halftime that completely changed the course of that game. This part stinks. This idea that you would lose this element of strategy in the surprise onside and what that's done, and that risky mentality that some coaches have taken into games, that part would absolutely stink, and I would be totally against that.
I agree. Again, the rule would read if the kickoff team declares they're attempting they have to declare they're attempting an onside kick. They have to actually declare it. And then you can line up 6 on one side, 4 on the other to try and get it. You never, 5% recover the onside kick? I don't care if they change the rule to that. You're not going to get more recoveries. They need to go again. Was it the XFL or the USFL that did the 4th and 15?
Yeah.
Give a team a chance that way. Onside kicks, I mean, no matter how kickers try and do it differently, it's still a very rare occurrence you're going to get it. So let them run a play. Let them run a 4th and 15. If they get it, then they have the ball. But to say there are no surprise onside kicks is ridiculous. Absolutely. Let's just get that out right away. Let's just not even have that involved in the possibility of a rule change to do that. You want to do a surprise onside kick, man, more power to you.
Well, and to me, it seems like an easy caveat to carve out in all this where, yes, we understand the ball has to travel in the air past the 20, unless you attempt an onside kick, which is obvious to everybody. There'd be no mistaking it for that team there. And quite honestly, if you're thinking about player safety and all of this, the return team in these new rules wouldn't be able to move until the returners got the ball anyway. So it's not like you'd have guys turning their heads back. You'd have guys not aware of this already. They'd be at a stalemate on the line of scrimmage. They'd be even more ready for this than normal, which ups the degree of difficulty some, but as far as player safety, puts them in a better position.
Now, we do have to say, Mike, if they do go to the new kickoff rules, remember the kicker's still on his own 30. The kickoff team would be on the other opponent's 40, and the kickoff return team would line up on the 35. So if you go to kickoffs that way, that would change the onside kick. Then you would definitely have to line up differently for an onside kick, right? You couldn't do it in that setup. So that's why I think you should be able to do the 4th and 15. If they put in the new kickoff.
I guess but you're right. Like for onsides that we all know are obvious at the end of the game, yes, right. I think the 4th and 15 option is much better because what this also does, like the NFL's whole reason for trying to change the kickoff rule is they had taken a play that had become a certainty. We saw this happen when they did with the extra points and moved it back. It had become too automatic, and so we had to make this harder for some of the best athletes on the planet. And that has been an overwhelming success in what they've done to the extra point. It's changed 2-point conversion math. It's made the game more exciting. They don't want certainties, and the kickoffs had started to become a certainty, as had the onside kick. Right. Making it so you have to declare it now just means you have taken a play that's more of a certainty and made it more prevalent in the sport, not less prevalent. So I'm with you in the obvious instances at the end of the game, Dad. The 4th and 15 is a much more exciting variable and something they absolutely need to consider because the onside kick has long since lost the ability, I think, to be an effective play in football.
Yeah, I agree. I would put in the 4th and 15 right now. I think it would be awesome because the most fearful team in that case, I'm sure, would still be the Chiefs, to make a 4th and 15. But I love it. And that's why I love the spring leagues and now merging as one to the UFL, as the XFL and the USFL, is for this reason, to try things like this, that the NFL should try and emulate. Like you said, you can do it for a year. Say, we're going to test this for a year. They've done it before. Let's do it again. Let's switch it up. But for sure on the kickoff return, bring that back into the game. Because you're right. I mean, playoff games, Super Bowl, all the flashbulbs off of the kickoff, and that's all you get it of because the ball's sailing out of the back of the end zone. So let's actually have a play, and lining it up differently is fine by me because you're still getting a kickoff return, so something can happen right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I can hear the chorus of people like, you're never going to make football all the way safe. I get that. I understand the nature of the sport.
Yeah.
Trust me, the first thing my dad said to me was, if you play this game long enough, you're not going to walk out whole. That's the admission to the party that most everyone makes. And now that you've got more of the information, I'm a lot more comfortable with that. We know for years the NFL had concussion info and stuff that they were not disclosing to the players, and that was shameful and wrong, and they're judged to this day because of it. But now that you have the information, you get to make the decision. That doesn't mean the NFL should stop trying to make this game a little bit safer in the places it can, or take a few of these concussive blows off when they've got the opportunity to do so. So those are all the things that are on the table. Change coming fast and furious off of Combine Weekend. But coming up next, we've got one bit of change at the diner table that's going to rock my world next year on GoJo Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Wherever you get this, the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and Roku. You can catch the best of GoJo and Golic on the radio wherever you listen to VSiN from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern every day as well. But if you missed any of it, or our great guest, thank you to Matt Miller, ESPN NFL Draft Analyst, for stopping by and helping recap the Combine with us. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts, as well as right here available on YouTube. As soon as we get done, all right, it's time to get into this, that, and third. And I'm nervous for this one now because quietly behind the scenes all day on the show, there's been a simmering disagreement among the parties involved. In one corner, we've got the Golics, renowned fats who have an affinity for places like New Orleans that we found out our dear Claudia Bellafato not as big of a fan of already, and it's been a debate that's rocked the show so much this morning. Claudia, and I'll give you a second on that because, I mean, we're bracing for the Super Bowl there next year, and you come in off a weekend in New Orleans saying, not really.
I don't, and I love food. Like, I'm a fats too. I'll be called that. I'd love to be. I'm a big foodie girl. And I went in there with high hopes about the po' boys and the jambalaya, but I'm a saucy girl. And what I've had so far, not very flavorful, not a ton of sauce. So maybe I'm just going to the wrong places. And Senior gave me the death stare when I told him this earlier. So I'm really putting myself in a bad light here. And you guys aren't even ready for the take I have next. So I'm kind of scared.
This is why I'm so scared now, because my father's disappointment's already palpable. You can see it on his face. And we had the story that we're super excited to talk about because there's been an announcement. We're in the middle of Girl Scout cookie season. Happy Girl Scout cookie season to all who observe. And the folks at the International House of Pancakes decided to go dumb in the lab and create the Thin Mint Girl Scout cookie pancakes in the midst of this, available for a limited time. The picture's glorious. There's chocolate chips. There's chocolate chunks of the cookies. The Girl Scout cookie, that's the number one in that category for me. And again, Claudia steps to the table with a look of disgust on her face that really worries me right now.
Mint is meant for toothpaste and mouthwash, not a cookie, people. I'm sorry, I know it's a hot take. I think Thin Mints are the worst Girl Scout cookie.
Dad, you okay?
It's just, give me peanut butter, give me coconut.
I don't think I've ever been as disappointed in a work child in my life. Then she's like my work daughter here, and how disappointed Claudia, I'm disappointed in you. Disappointed. Understand, this is 4 green buttermilk pancakes topped with a creamy cheesecake mousse. Real pieces of Girl Scout Thin Mints and whipped cream topping on top. It's one thing if you don't like this, but to rip Girl Scout cookies and Thin Mint cookies? Who the hell are you?
She's attacking mint altogether. Like mint chocolate chip is my favorite flavor of ice cream too. Like you and I, total opposite sides of the track. This is a real like Capulets and Montague.
Yeah, my dad loves peppermint ice cream, and I just I'm looking at the Girl Scouts website right now to make sure I'm not crazy and saying it's the worst flavor. Give me caramel, give me peanut butter, give me s'mores. Like I don't even like lemons. I would eat the lemonade cookie, but Thin Mints are just, I'm sorry guys. I can't get on it with you there.
I'm watching the diabetes take over my dad like Venom in the Spider-Man franchise right now. He's ready to jump through the screen.
Hey, your mother and I saw that the other day on the menu. We're going there today.
Yeah,
I'm going there today. We're going there today.
You know what? You know what?
And you know what? Every bite of the Girl Scout cookie, Claudia, I'm going to think of you and your hate for it, and it's going to just disgust me more and more.
Your son's here in Boston, and we were going to grab lunch, so I think now I know where we're going to lunch, and I'm going to have to get the nasty toothpaste pancake.
Oh, my God.
Give me the flapjack.
The slander of my beloved Thin Mints right now. We got to get away from this one. Just know, Thin Mints, Girl Scout cookies, the Golics love you. There aren't enough, it's not physically possible for me to eat anything less than an entire sleeve of Thin Mints. It is sitting a little bit cold, a little bit warm. It doesn't matter. A player for all seasons right now, a 5-tool effort. And like Claudia said, probably pancakes that we're going to eat at some point during the course of this week out here in Boston. Let's try and move away from controversy and unite about something that can bring us all together. The children, Claudia. Let the children save us right now.
Yes, and this, please save us. This is adorable, this video we're about to show you. It's Blues assistant coach Steve Ott. His son got on the Jumbotron and did his thing. Immediately, no hesitation, ripped the shirt off, started dancing, and they keep going back to Ott's face, and he's just like, yep, that's my kid. Not shocked, not even fazed, really. He's just like, that's my boy. Oh. And Senior, I'm curious, has Mike Jr. ever done this? And could you picture him doing it now? Because I feel like this could be a thing for GoJo.
No. My wife will get mad at me because when Mike was that age, even Mike will admit he wore a T-shirt in the pool.
As a fat kid.
So
I did that too, I'm not going to lie.
Rite of passage.
I had a phase.
Oh no, I fell in. I can't take it off now. It's all wet.
This is something that, as Mike well knows, that his brother and my son Jake would do. Jake would have done this in a heartbeat. So my question, how old do we think this kid is? What a name, too. Maverick Ott. Maverick.
You
That's
got
a great
to
name.
top when your name's Maverick, right?
Yeah,
okay.
He's definitely a Maverick.
But how old do we think he is?
Probably
right?
10.
Probably, I was going to say around 10, yeah.
All right, let's say 9 or 10. So I guess I'll ask the question, what's the cutoff? What's the cutoff where the coach looks up, Steve Ott looks up, sees his kid, and kind of you smile a little bit. But what's the age where you go, what the hell are you doing?
The smile turns into
what's
disappointment.
What's the age that's a little too far for that?
The legal drinking age.
I was going to say, once you put a beer in that kid's hand, it's probably just downhill.
It's like, oh, God, Maverick's drunk again.
Mav's going to be a legend. Can we call him Mav? I think Mav's going to be a legend.
He's our friend at this point.
Oh, he is. At that age, at that age, it's very cool. But I wonder if you look up and there's a 32-year-old, an older coach, and his 32-year-old son is popping the top. If you're going, oh my God, someone stop serving him.
But Jason Kelce, look at him. I mean, that man can rip his shirt off and everybody loves him regardless of the age. So
true.
Absolutely. Speaking of love regardless of age here, why don't we get to the third? We've had a major addition to the show family here in this last weekend. We mentioned off the top of the show, if you weren't with us, our dear friend Jessie Cofield had her beautiful son Henry. The specs on this kid, an absolute unit, as she has dubbed him here. And so we wanted to make sure that as Hank, I feel like Henry, Hank, I don't know, I have a pug named Hank, so I'm very into the idea of bringing him into the narrative universe around here as a Hank, especially at that size. He's a hoss, he's Hank. To bring Hank into the GoJo and Golic family, we do things a very specific way around here. We're a poetry-based family. We do the Golic acrostic to preview the NFL each and every weekend that comes with a poem written by our wonderful producer, Slates. And so for the occasion, we wanted to commemorate it with a poem here. Jesse, for you and Henry, here you go.
J is for the junk food he'll never get to take.
E is for the endless nights your nanny will be awake.
S is for the stone crabs he'll get on holidays.
S is also for the caviar you'll be serving on silver trays.
I is for all the international travel he'll probably do before he's 3.
And E is for the extra love you get from your work family.
Jesse, we love you. We're so excited for you and your family. Go ahead, Baja Blast that baby out.
Congrats, Jesse. Well done out of you.
You and Mike are going to be the best parents to this little boy because you're already the best parents to Vivian and Thor, obviously.
Congrats,
Congratulations, Jesse! Oh my God!
Can't wait to have you back, but also, take all the time you can.
Congratulations, Jesse!
Enjoy the time that you all get together. We can't wait to have you back and meet the newest addition to the GoJo and Golic family. Love you, bud.